Before we start with the predictions today, I want to give my 2 cents about what happened on Monday. For those of you who didn't see the game, Bills safety Damar Hamlin, he had a really scary incident where he had made a tackle on T. Higgins. He got up and just collapsed shortly after standing up. And apparently, he went into cardiac arrest on the field. They were giving him CPR. They brought the ambulance out and took him to emergency care, and then the game ended up being postponed for that reason. So I don't have any stats on the Bills or the Bengals because the game stopped early in the first quarter, and it's honestly something that I don't think I've ever seen before in the NFL. I actually didn't see it happen live. I was driving home from Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I do that every Monday. But I was driving home and I saw that, there was confusion. I was like, okay, a player's injured. And then it kept going longer. And I was like, man, what is going on? And I eventually saw the video of what happened. And it's honestly one of those freaky incidents where without warning, something crazy can happen. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I actually had a similar situation happen to me when I was working at my university's fitness center. We had someone who was playing basketball. It was a Friday night. Someone was playing basketball, and they also collapsed and was having a seizure on the floor. And he had no history in this. It just happened. Like we called DMS. They gave him CPR, but he actually passed away on the way to the hospital. It was a big thing in the university that it had happened and stuff like that. And I pray that doesn't happen to Damar Hamlin, obviously. But from what I can tell, he does have a pulse. He's in critical condition, and it's still up in the air as to what happened. One of the analysts was saying that, you know, it's a matter of life and death, and it's honestly pretty crazy that this whole situation has happened. My thoughts and prayers go out to the Buffalo Bills, Damar Hamlin and his family. Today it's Tuesday morning right now. If an update becomes available, but by the time I upload this video, I'll obviously either post a caption about it or I'll clip in a video for it. But hopefully he's okay because you hate to see something like this happen in the NFL to anybody. So with that being said, we're going to get into Week 18 predictions. So for Week 18, there's no Thursday night game. There's 2 games on Saturday. The first game, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry. I think it's interesting that we now have an extra week of football because now we can see kind of what the team's records would have been if the season were to end like it did in the last couple years. So the Chiefs are 13-3, the Raiders are 6-10. The Chiefs are still fighting for the number 1 seed. I believe they will obviously have it because the Bills never got to finish their game. So right now, Jared Stidham is the Raiders quarterback. They have pretty much said they're moving on from Derek Carr without saying that they're moving on from Derek Carr, which I think is pretty shocking, honestly. But I think they just need a change in scenery. And they might be going after Tom Brady. It would not surprise me if they went after Tom Brady because Brady has obviously worked with Josh McDaniels. He knows their system. However, that being said, the offense is not the problem with the Raiders. The problem is their defense blowing these double-digit leads, right? And if you think about it, the Raiders could easily be 5-11 if the Patriots didn't blow that one game. For what it's worth, Jarrett Stidham was 23-34, 365 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 108.1 passer rating in their loss against the San Francisco 49ers. Again, they scored 34 points against the number 1 ranked defense in both yards and points. So, you remember I was saying earlier about the Commanders scoring 20 points and how only one team had done that this, with the exception of the Chiefs, who I think scored 40 against the 49ers, this is the most any team has scored against the 49ers this season, which is incredibly impressive. The Raiders don't have a problem on offense. And to further expound that, Devontae Adams had 7 receptions for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their problem is not on offense. Their problem is with their defense not keeping them in these games. And Brady's the greatest of all time, but I question if he's going to be able to do any better than what Derek Carr has done. And by that I mean, is he going to be able to keep a double-digit lead when the Raiders' defense starts failing them? I think what they need is a new defensive coordinator, someone who can fix up this defense. Because if they can do that, the Raiders could be dangerous. Because the Raiders are a high-scoring team here. I'm just looking at their statistics here. You know, they've scored 30 points a couple times in this game. They scored 30 against the Broncos. Again, a very good defense. They scored 38 against the Texans. They scored 40 against the Seahawks. I was going to say they scored 30 against the Patriots, but they didn't really. And then they scored 34 against the 49ers. So, like, their offense does really well. It's just a matter of their defense not taking things from them. As for the Chiefs, they had another, typical Chiefs outing where they beat the Broncos 27-24. Patrick Mahomes was 29 of 42, 328 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, and 106.1 passer rating. So again, MVP caliber game there for Patrick Mahomes. I'm not expecting much from this game. I'm going to be going with the Chiefs on this one. They frankly should beat a division rival in the Raiders. The Raiders are in rebuild mode. I'm going with the Chiefs. So the next game is going to be a bit more interesting. We have the Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. This game is going to decide the AFC South. The Titans have been on a remarkable skid these last couple weeks. They've lost 6 in a row, which is unbelievable. So they're 7-9 now. They lost 6 in a row, which means at one point they were 7-3. They were comfortably in the lead of their division, but this has probably been, with the exception of the Dolphins, I guess they're kind of even, but the greatest collapse so far, and honestly, maybe one of the greatest collapses in recent memory, honestly, if you really think about it, losing 6 straight to lose to a team that got hot at the right time in the Jacksonville Jaguars, who also, had their own winning streak. They've won 5 of their last 6. So, after losing 5 straight early on in the season, they have done a really good job to right the ship here. So, the Titans lost to the Cowboys 27-13. Joshua Dobbs was the quarterback. They are having quarterback problems. Ryan Tannehill's still injured. Malik Willis has played terribly. They can't start him with the way that he's been playing these last couple weeks. Derrick Henry was inactive. They're going to start him this game because this is the game that really matters. As for the Jaguars, they had a very impressive showing against the Texans. They beat them 31-3. Trevor Lawrence was 17 of 21 for 152 yards and a 77 passer rating. So he didn't really contribute that much. Travis Etienne was a big contributor. He had 9 carries for 108 yards, 1 touchdown. He averaged 12 yards a carry. Very, very impressive. So both teams are coming from 2 different slants here. The Jaguars have all the confidence in the world, and the Titans are basically just trying to limp into the playoffs at 8-9. So what's going to happen in this game? It's tough because when Derrick Henry plays, they have a chance. But what I've been seeing these last couple weeks is that even if Derrick Henry plays well and, rushes for $130 and scores a touchdown, they need more than that. And I don't think they're going to get more against the Jaguars, who are really firing on all cylinders here. They're doing a really, really good job. I'm going with the Jaguars on this one to win the division and go to the playoffs for the first time since their 2017 Cinderella run. So a lot of these other games are to be determined. So I'm really just kind of gonna go off on the cuff here. I'm gonna get it out of the way now. Even though it's a 4:00 game, the Washington Commanders are going against the Dallas Cowboys. It's at FedEx Field. And sorry, my hair's a bit of a mess. I just woke up a couple hours ago. I need to get to work soon, so I'm getting the video out early. But the Commanders, I don't know what they were thinking starting Carson Wentz, because Taylor Heineke, even at the beginning of the season, was running the offense better than Carson Wentz. So Heineke's first start was against the Green Bay Packers. Okay, so when Carson Wentz was the starter, they were 2-5. They barely snuck past the Bears. They lost 4 straight. Then, when Heineke came in, they won 5 of 6. They lost to the Vikings. Obviously, they had their tie with the Giants, the bye, and then the 3-game skid, which obviously wasn't good. You know, they tied the Giants. They lost to the Giants. They lost to San Francisco, which again is a good team. Like and Heineke played well. He had like 110 passer rating. I understand he had those 2 turnovers back to back, which aren't good. But you can't bench a quarterback for that, and you can't bench him for a quarterback that hasn't been playing as good as Heineke has. I don't know what they were thinking. I know that Carson Wentz is a very prototypical quarterback. He looks the part. He has the arm talent of a franchise quarterback, but he doesn't have the intangibles anymore. He doesn't have the decision making anymore, and it showed in this game because what ended up happening? He ended up throwing 3 interceptions. So his overall stat line was he was 16 of 28 for 143 yards, 3 interceptions, a 31.4 passer rating. To put it in blanket terms, he laid an egg. He played awful. Our defense was holding up their end of the bargain for a little bit. They obviously gave up 24 points, and they let Amari Cooper get loose a couple times. But that's still no excuse for your offense being as anemic as it was. And what's been happening this season is Carson Wentz has padded his stats through garbage time football, and that's what he's done throughout his entire starting campaign. They've gotten down, then Carson Wentz faces a deep zone, they get back into the game marginally, and they eventually don't win. You know, like I think if Taylor Heineke started that game against the Titans, they would have won that game. I truly believe that. It's just like I don't know what they were thinking, and I think that we're getting a new owner soon, hopefully. I think that Ron Rivera needs to go as well. The decision made here falls squarely on the fact they started Carson Wentz, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is what caused it. So I think Ron Rivera needs to go. I think Scott Turner needs to go as well. They just don't. They blew their playoff chances in this game doing this. Yes, the Packers won. Yes, the Lions won. But they still controlled their own destiny, and they still had an opportunity to go into Week 18 against the Cowboys with a win in their in scenario, and that didn't happen. As for the Cowboys, they rolled over anemic Titans team 27-13. Dak Prescott was 29 of 41, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 85.6 passer rating. Dak has not played the best, but the fact of the matter is the Cowboys are still 12-4. They're still having a very, very good season. They have an opportunity to really close out the season on a high note, demolishing a weakened Commanders team. They're looking towards the future, and I'm going with the Cowboys on this one. So next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, not much to talk about with this game since the Bengals didn't finish their game on Monday, but I do have a lot to say about the Ravens. The Ravens are 10-6, but they're an extremely weak 10-6. What we've seen these last couple games where Tyler Huntley has started is how badly they need Lamar. If I remember correctly, Lamar went down in the Broncos game. Since then, they have scored 9 points, 14 points, 3 points, 9 points, 13 points. They cannot move the offense with Tyler Huntley. I used to think Tyler Huntley was a good quarterback. Having second thoughts about it now. He is not looked good at all as their starter. He was 14 of 21, 130 yards, a touchdown, a pick, and a 79.5 passer rating, which is not going to cut it. They lost to the Steelers on a game-losing interception by Tyler Huntley. They had the ball, they were driving, threw a bad pass, and it was intercepted by the Steelers. They're 10-6, but right now they have limped their way into the playoffs. And this game decides the division. If the Ravens win, they do win the division. But with how the Bengals have been playing, I don't really think they have much of a chance. So I'm going with the Bengals on this one, and I think that the Ravens are going to be in big trouble in the playoffs roll around if Lamar isn't healthy. I think that he is. I think they're just kind of keeping him healthy for when the playoffs do come. But the bigger issue with the Ravens is, what are they going to do this offseason with Lamar? They can't let him walk. They have shown in these last couple games that Lamar is their entire offense. They need Lamar Jackson to be successful on offense. In the same way that the Cardinals need Kyler Murray to be successful, in the same way that the Bears need Justin Fields to be successful. It's these dual threat quarterbacks. It's a theme right now with all these dual threat quarterbacks being the entire offense. And when the offense isn't, when he doesn't play, the offense doesn't play. You know. So I'm going with the Bengals. A lot of question marks need to be addressed by the Baltimore Ravens this offseason. So next up, another inconsequential game because the Buccaneers have already clinched. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Atlanta Falcons. How crazy is it that the Buccaneers have clinched their division in Week 17 at 8-8? Now, this is what I was saying about Brady. You can never count him out. Everyone's saying that he's washed. He's not washed. He just... it's kind of hard to explain, but, you know, he can still sling the ball at 45 years old. It is beyond belief. He was 34 of 45, 432 yards, 3 touchdowns, 117.3 passer rating. I wrote 217. That doesn't sound right. I don't think that is even possible. But he played amazing. And then Mike Evans, 10 receptions for 207 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is exactly the kind of win that the Buccaneers needed to end the season. It's why you can never count out Brady. Now they're a bit of a threat now. So if they're the 4th seed, then they're playing the 5th seed. The 5th seed right now is the Dallas Cowboys. I would not be surprised if Tampa Bay upsets the Cowboys in the wild card round. I really don't think. Really would not surprise me. They're getting hot at the right time, much like the Green Bay Packers, and they could be a force to be reckoned with. Obviously, I'm going to go with the Buccaneers on this one. The Falcons don't have really a lot to play for. They're in the same situation as the Commanders. I'm going with the Buccaneers on this one. So next up, we have the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. Again, I'm going to keep this one kind of brief. Buffalo Bills didn't finish their game. The Patriots are 8-8, and right now they hold the 7th seed. They have a couple teams still nipping at their heels. For example, the Miami Dolphins, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I guess on paper, the Tennessee Titans, but it's mainly those 3. And if the Patriots win, then they're in. The only problem is they're playing the Buffalo Bills. It's just insane what's been going on with the Patriots. They have been very up and down, I guess is the way to say it. So they've lost 4 out of their last 6. As we know, one of those losses may not have happened against the Bengals. They kind of did that to themselves. In this game, I don't think that they're going to win. Like, it's one of those things where Bill Belichick is a good enough coach that the Patriots will not lose to a team like the Bears or the Colts, a team that's beneath them. But when it comes to a strong team like the Bills made quick work of the Patriots when they played in primetime. I believe it was Thursday night, and the Patriots didn't even show any fire. They did not do well in the slightest. So I'm going with the Bills on this one. They're going to win. They're going to go to 13-3, but... well, we'll have to see what happens against the Bengals, but they may have just lost their number 1 seed if the Chiefs win again and then go to 14-3. All remains to be seen yet. We don't know. So next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the Chicago Bears. So again, another inconsequential game, but this is more so for the morale or just how high up the team is when the playoffs roll around. And the Vikings have not looked good. They lost to the Packers 17-41. It was a terrible loss. Something noticeable that I realized is all 4 of the Vikings' losses have come by 2 possessions. They've been bad losses. First off, they lost to the Eagles by 17 points in Week 2. Remember, that was a primetime Kirk moment. They lost by 27 points to the Cowboys. Then they lost 11 points to the Lions and 24 points to the Packers. So they either barely squeak by with a win, or their losses have been blowouts. There's been no in between. And that's not a sustainable model for a winning franchise in the playoffs. Kirk Cousins was 18 of 31 for 205 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions. Really bad game. I think that the Vikings are still going to win this game just because the Bears are all Justin Fields, and I believe Justin Fields left the game early. They lost to the Lions 41-10, another bad loss there. He was 7 of 21 for 75 yards, but he also had 10 carries for 132 yards. The Bears have a lot of work to do with Justin Fields over the offseason, but the good news is they have seen sparks from him. And it's going to be all about building the offense around him, keeping their defense strong. I don't think they're going to be contenders next year, but they could certainly be a lot better. So I'm going with the Vikings on this one. Another game, this is a dartboard game. We have the Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. Nothing to say about this one, but both these are probably two bottom 5 teams in the league. I'm going with, actually, you know what? I'm going to go with the Texans because they've played some pretty close games, and it doesn't really matter if they win this game. Well, it might, because they might lose the number 1 spot to the Bears, now that I think about it, because the Bears could be 3-14, the Texans could be 2-13-1, so it would benefit them if they lost this game. But they've played a lot of close games, so I think that the Texans are going to win this one. Both these teams are in rebuild mode, though. It's brutal. So next up, another important game. We have the New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are tied with the Titans right now for the biggest collapse in the game right now. They've lost 5 straight. Tua Tagovailoa has sustained another concussion, which is just not much to say. It's really not good after what happened early in the season. The fact that he still has these concussions, I read something saying that he couldn't remember a lot of the mistakes that he made when he was reviewing the film, and that's very dangerous if he's having memory problems. Tua has a lot of rehab to do. I don't know how much you can repair stuff like that. I don't know how easy it is to come back from multiple concussions like this and not sustain permanent damage. I don't know what kind of rehab there is, but it's not looking good for them. And Tua has been the reason why they've won a lot of these games. Teddy Bridgewater is a competent backup. For example, he was 12 of 29, 161 yards, a touchdown, a pick, and an 85.7 passer rating. They still came up short against the Patriots, though. But they are playing a Jets team that has collapsed just as mightily. They've lost 6 of 7. They were officially eliminated from the playoffs. Mike White was 23 of 46, 240 yards, 2 interceptions, a 47.4 passer rating. They lost to the Seahawks 23-6. This is the second straight game where they have not scored a single touchdown. The Jets' offense has been anemic since Breece Hall was injured. We've seen their potential, though. We've seen what the Jets are capable of with how great their defense is. It's just, it's an inverse problem to the Raiders. The Raiders have a great offense, but their defense keeps killing them. Jets have a great defense, but their offense is just so anemic they can't get anything done. And the Seahawks defense hasn't exactly been a world beater, right? But they're still struggling. I am going to go with the Dolphins on this one, though, just because the Jets are such a beaten down team at this moment. They are just struggling mightily. And I think that's going to continue going into this game, going into the offseason. I saw another interesting statistic that this 12-season playoff drought by the Jets is the longest in franchise history. Knowing the Jets, that's saying a lot. So I'm going with the Dolphins on this one. So this next game is another inconsequential one. We have the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. The Saints have somehow made it to 7-9 this season with everything that's happened, with their lack of talent, with everything. Andy Dalton has led them to a 7-9 campaign, which is actually better than the Carolina Panthers. There's a time where we thought the Panthers were going to be better than the Saints. Strange turn of events there. Neither of these teams obviously going anywhere. The one thing I do want to point out, though, is the Panthers in this game against the Buccaneers, they had a chance to take the division. It unfortunately didn't happen. I would chalk it down to win some, you lose some. Everyone thought the Buccaneers were the better team, and they kind of showed it in the game itself. The biggest takeaway that I have is how the Panthers were able to rally after firing their head coach. Getting Steve Wilkes in there, and the fact that they were looking like, so from the Falcons game to this last one, they went 4-3. That is a much better start than when they were 2-7. That's a big change. And most notably, I think, is how Sam Darnold has started to play well. He was 23 of 37 for 341 yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception for 108.1 passer rating. So he actually played pretty darn well, which I think is a good thing. This makes the Panthers offseason a bit more interesting, but it also gives them a bit more hope. because if Sam Darnold is playing well in important games, don't forget that. This was a very important game against the Buccaneers, and he showed up for it, and he played well. The Panthers may have someone as their quarterback, I guess it maybe makes things a little bit more difficult. Rather than starting from scratch, they give a guy a chance that has let them down. I don't know. But I honestly think the Panthers are going to win this game. Again, very inconsequential. Doesn't really matter. Next up, we have an important one. We have the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers miraculously have a chance to not finish below 500 at a time when I thought that it was absolutely going to happen this time. They were 2-6 at one point, but they have rattled off 3 straight wins. They've won 5 of their last 6, which is just incredible. And it all coincided with TJ Watt coming back. I don't know what it is about him. He changes the entire chemistry of the team, and they become winners with him on it. So they do need a bit of help, though. I do believe that the Patriots still need to lose because they have the 7th seed right now, despite being 8-8 with the Steelers. So the Patriots need to lose, which is very possible because they're playing the Bills, so that's very possible. And the Steelers need to beat the Browns, which is very possible. I'm going to just cut to the chase and say the Steelers, I think, are going to win. Kenny Pickett has gotten better with each game. Game by game, he has been getting better. And it seems like he had some growing pains early on in the season, but he's rectified them, and he's turned into a very quality starter for the Steelers. Najee Harris as well really controlled the tempo of that game. He had 22 carries for 111 yards. That's only 5 yards a carry, but he wore them down, right? And then Kenny Pickett was 15 to 27 for 168 yards, touchdown, 86.7 passer rating. They only scored 16 points, though, which is probably not going to cut it in the playoffs, but they have a chance to make a run here and do what they did last season where they barely squeaked into the playoffs. They got bounced in the first round. It wasn't even close, but they still made the playoffs. Regardless of if they make it or not, if they beat the Browns, they will have come back from a massive deficit to once again finish with a winning season, which that alone I think is an incredible accomplishment for the franchise. Next up, we have the LA Chargers at the Denver Broncos. Again, a game not really to talk about here. The Broncos are the Broncos. There's not much more that I can say about how their season has gone. They lost to the Chiefs 24-27. Russell Wilson was 26 of 38, 222 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 81.3 passer rating. I think that the Broncos aren't a lost cause because from what I've seen with Russell Wilson, his physical talent is still there. That being said, I think he's in a similar situation to Carson Wentz, where the physical talent is still there. But it's up here that's the problem. The decision-making, the confidence, his football IQ, he's struggling with that. Whether it's a new coach coming in that's going to help him out, whether it was Seattle's system that he was in that helped him so much, I don't know, but I do think that Russell Wilson will figure it out. As for the Chargers, they are getting hot at a good time. Justin Herbert, they beat the Rams 31-10 for one thing. Justin Herbert was 21 of 28, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, 119 passer rating, and then Austin Eckler had 10 carries for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is exactly what you want from a playoff-bound team to end the season on a high note so they can go in firing on all cylinders against the opposition. And it looks like that's what's going to happen. I'm going with the Chargers. They're going to be 11-6, one of their better records in a while. And then it's going to be a real question of how they fare in the playoffs. So next up, we have the New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a it doesn't really matter, but because both teams have clinched. But I think what is more important is the Eagles snagging that number 1 seed. If the 49ers win, which it looks like they're going to against the Cardinals, and the Eagles lose, the 49ers will have taken the number 1 seed. Because I believe the similar matchups, for one thing, they beat the Commanders and we beat the Eagles, so they have them on that front. But the Eagles do have something to fight for here. They have not looked the best these last couple games. They've lost 2 straight. However, both of those games Gardner Minshew has played. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to play Jalen Hurts for this last game because it doesn't really matter. They are looking forward to the playoffs here. But it's a similar situation in the inverse to teams like the Steelers, Chargers, and Packers, where the Eagles are starting to cool down at a bad time. Right when the playoffs start, they need to be playing their best football. I do think they're going to recover because they have done really, really well recovering from adversity in this season. I am still going to go with the Eagles. The Giants have not really beaten anyone good in the last couple weeks, and when they've played good teams, they've lost to them. They beat the Colts 38-10, but the Colts are the Colts. The Giants should beat them 38-10. I think that the Giants are on track to have an early first-round bounce in the playoffs just because they've played well against bad teams, but when they've played good teams, they've not beaten them, And that's what you need to be a successful playoff team. They're still very much a work in progress, but they took a huge step in the right direction this season. So I'm still going with the Eagles on this one. So we're coming down to the nitty-gritty. I'm just going to glance over this one. The Cardinals at 49ers. The 49ers are going to win this one. I think they are the best team in the NFC right now. They have the best roster. Christian McCaffrey's going off. Brock Purdy is exceeding expectations. He's been the best quarterback they've had out of their the three that they've started. It's crazy how a team that started 3 quarterbacks this season are on pace to win 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, end the season 10 wins in a row. People forget they were 3-4 at one point, and they've won out ever since their loss to the Chiefs. The 49ers, I think, are going to be the most dangerous playoff team, and I think they could really, really shock some people. So I'm going with the 49ers on this one. And then next up, we have the LA Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Again, not much of a game here. The Rams are 5-11. What else? Much like the Broncos, what else can I say that hasn't already been said? They've been the worst reigning champion in NFL history. Baker Mayfield, they have played better with Baker Mayfield, and I think that it can lead to some optimism. That if Matthew Stafford goes down, they at least have a competent quarterback to back him up. And with the injury concerns for Matt Stafford, it may end up being a pretty good thing that they ended up grabbing Baker Mayfield, right? So that's good. The Seahawks are the number 7 seed. They control their own destiny. A win here, I believe, makes them safe from pressure by the Lions and Packers. Don't quote me on that. I'm going to have to look it over again just to make sure. But right now, they're the number 7 seed, so logic would dictate that they control their own destiny here. If the Rams upset the Seahawks, which I think that they could, it'd be a bad loss for the Seahawks because they have, obviously, as you know, they have not looked good. They've lost 5 of their last 7. They've been very weak. They beat a really bad Jets team, and they beat the Rams earlier this season 27-23. I believe that was before Baker Mayfield was starting, though. Let me just double check here really quick. Yeah, so that was before Baker had started. The Rams seem to be a different team when Baker starts. They've only gone 2-2, but with how badly they've been this season, it's been a weird change of pace. So it's not going to be a gimme game for the Seahawks. The Rams don't have any draft picks to lose, so they're going to go out there and play their best football. But I am going to go with the Seahawks. Okay, guys, last but certainly not least, we have the most exciting game of this week. We have the Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers. Both teams are 8-8, and if the Seahawks lose, whoever wins this game makes the playoffs. This is a tale of two halves with both of these teams because the Lions got hot at, they've had a tale of 2 seasons. They lost 5 straight, then they went and won 6 of their last 7. They had a really bad loss against the Panthers, a win that they really needed, and then they demolished the Bears 41-10. You really don't know what you're going to get with the Lions. They score a lot of points, but their defense has kept them out of playoff contention so far. As for the Green Bay Packers, they went on that 4-game skid. Well, actually, it was more than that. They lost 7 of their last 8, which is uncharacteristic to say the least for the Packers, but they've won 4 straight, and they've looked really impressive while doing it. This is what happens when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. You can recorrect your team at the right time. If the Packers do make the playoffs, out of the 3 teams, the Seahawks, the Lions, and Packers, I think the Packers are the best by a country mile. I think that they've reestablished control of their team, and any team that plays them, like if they end up playing the Vikings, you saw what they did to the Vikings. The Packers could make a deep playoff run despite being the number 7 seed. Um, it's just a matter of, is it too little too late? Because they need help. They need the Rams to beat the Seahawks, and they need to beat the Lions, which I think they will do. With the way both these teams are trending, the Packers have looked unbelievable. Aaron Rodgers was 15 to 24, 159 yards, a touchdown, 95.7 passer rating. So, they've been all right. But the Lions they scored 41 points against the Bears. Jared Goff, 21 of 29, 255 yards, 3 touchdowns, 133.5 passer rating. And then Jamal Williams had 22 carries for 144 yards and a touchdown. So, extremely impressive offensive showing by the Lions. The only reason the Bears didn't score more points was because Justin Fields left the game. If Justin Fields didn't leave the game, the Bears may have scored more points. That's the way I look at it. So I am going to be going with the Packers on this one. The Lions, again, too little too late. They had that really bad skid early in the season where they lost like 5 straight. That can't happen to good teams. It's actually happened a lot this season, as you've noticed. It happened with the Seahawks. It happened with the Titans. It's happened with the Jets. It's happened with the Packers. Right now, like I said, I think everyone sees them as the threat that they were before. And if they do make it in the playoffs, they're going to be able to wreak havoc. It's just going to be a matter if they can make it in. So I'm going with the Packers. They're going to need some help. But for this game at least, I'm going with the Packers. So, guys, that concludes the NFL predictions for the regular season of 2022. I can't believe we're finally here. But we still have more to cover as we go over the playoff picture. So there's a lot to go over here. A lot of teams have already clinched, right? There's really only a couple things to really go over here. Starting off with the NFC, we have the Eagles at 13-3. The 49ers and Vikings are both at 12-4. Buccaneers miraculously at 8-8 have clinched the playoffs, and the Cowboys are 12-4. And the Giants are 9-6-1. All those teams have clinched. The only opening spot is the Seattle Seahawks, who are 8-8. The Lions and Packers are both 8-8 as well. So that would mean that the Seahawks would have to lose, and then whichever team wins against the Lions and Packers, they go to the playoffs. So that game with the Lions and Packers is either going to be incredibly exciting or incredibly anticlimactic, depending on what happens in the Rams-Seahawks game. Another notable thing is if the Eagles end up losing and the 49ers win, they will move up to the number 1 seed. That illustrious first-round bye is going to be much needed by the 49ers. It's going to be much needed by any team. And there's a chance that they could get it if the Eagles lose. So, as for the AFC, the Chiefs hold the number 1 seed at 13-3, again, because the Bills did not finish their game with the Bengals. If the Bills beat the Bengals and then they win again, that means that the Bills will be the number 1 seed. The Bengals are 11-4, Chargers are 10-6, and then the Ravens are 10-6 as well. The Ravens at the number 6 seed, they have a chance to take the division from the Bengals. If the Bengals lose out and the Ravens win, they will take the division. Right now, it's not looking great for the Ravens. Again, like I said, they're the number 6 seed, which means they'll face the number 3 seed. How about that? So they will end up playing the Bengals regardless, it looks like. It's either going to be a home game or it's going to be an away game. Hope it's a home game because then I can go out and watch it with some people. It's going to be a good time. The Chargers, again, 10-6. They really reestablished themselves. And then in the hunt, we have the Jaguars at 8-8 at the number 4 seed and the Patriots at 8-8 at the number 7 seed. There are 3 teams still alive right now. The Dolphins, the Steelers, and the Titans. The Titans have the easiest path to the playoffs. All they need to do is beat the Jaguars. They jump over the Jaguars, and they make the playoffs as the number 4 seed. The Patriots, they need to win, and they're in. The Dolphins need to win, and they need the Patriots to lose. And the Steelers, they need to win, and they need both the Patriots and the Dolphins to lose. But that is not that unlikely, as we know, because the Bills are playing the Patriots, so that there is a chance that it happens. However, the Jets beating the Dolphins is a lot less likely. So right now, looking at it, I think that, but God, because Tua's not going to play, and the Dolphins have looked terrible, but so have the Jets, right? So I think anything can happen with this 7 seed. I don't know if the Steelers are most likely. I think that, like, the Steelers, I think, are most likely to win their game. And I guess that means they have the best chance of making the playoffs. And I do think at this stage, they're the best of the three teams. They're a lot like the Packers. They got hot at the right time, but it's a matter of, is it too little, too late? Um, if the Steelers were to win and they become the 7th seed, they will face the number 4 seed. No, sorry, they face the number 2 seed, which will either be the Bills or the Chiefs, and then they'll probably just get bounced at that point. It would be a massive upset if they managed to beat one of those teams. But yeah, I think that concludes it. Ladies and gentlemen, the regular season is almost over. They're not, my predictions aren't going to be done. I'm obviously going to be going over the playoffs in a similar vein that I'm doing the regular season. But before I sign off, I just want to thank everyone for watching, the few people that have been watching. This has been a very interesting experiment for me to release a video once a week for, 2.5 months, 3 months, while balancing a full-time job, while balancing just being in a completely different situation. So I want to thank everyone for watching. More football videos in the off-season are going to come, just not as frequently. And when the 2023 season starts, you can look forward to have similar content from me. So, guys, that concludes the regular season. Next week, it'll be the playoffs, and that's when things get really interesting. So thank you guys so much. Take care.